insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gandhi. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas, the message from the Russian spy chief is loud and clear. Russia and Belarus are ready to act over what he calls European escalation around Ukraine. We decode the implications for you. That's coming up in just a bit, and here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What's the latest on the US-Iran nuclear talks? What happens next, and where do things stand right now? We tell you all that you need to know. Rare earths are a crucial weapon with China as the trade battle between America and China intensifies. We get you the bigger picture. All this and more coming up. The warning bells of war are ringing loud in Europe, and this message is coming straight from Moscow's highest corridors of power. Russia appears to be bracing for a direct confrontation with NATO, not a Cold War, not a diplomatic spat, but an actual military face-off. Russian President Vladimir Putin's top spy chief has publicly accused the NATO of increasing its military activity in the border areas surrounding both Russia and Belarus. And this, he said, has prompted both Russian and Belarusian security services to prepare for quote-unquote preemptive measures against NATO countries. While holding talks with the Belarusian president, the head of Russia's SVR Foreign Intelligence Service has said, and I'm quoting here now, "We feel and see that European countries, especially France, Britain and Germany, are increasing the level of escalation around the Ukrainian conflict. So we need to act preemptively. We are ready for this," quote unquote. And the spy chief further said that Russia would inflict quote unquote damage on the entire military alliance if NATO threatens Moscow or Belarus, adding that Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia would be, in his words, the first to suffer. Remember, in April 2022, Russian bombers and fighters practiced delivering surgical strikes in drills in the Baltic region. The drills involved over 10 crews of Su-24M and Su-27 aircraft. But why is Narishkin saying all of this really? Is the NATO actually building its forces near Russia and Belarusian borders? You see, just 2 weeks ago, Germany deployed a 5,000-strong armored brigade in Lithuania, marking Germany's first permanent foreign troop deployment since the Second World War. And where did they place them? Right on Lithuania's border with Belarus. And there's more, by the way. Poland and the Baltic states like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania announced plans to withdraw from an international treaty banning the use of landmines, citing growing threats from Russia. And in mid-February, Finland and American troops carried out massive drills preparing for a winter war near the Arctic region. And just earlier today, the Finnish government decided to keep the border with Russia shut until further notice, without specifying any further details. So as the NATO increases troop presence in its eastern flank and carries out drills for a future war, we are circling back to that big question: what do preemptive measures really mean for Moscow? Just last December, Belarus's president said the country is hosting dozens of Russian nuclear weapons and was in the process of preparing facilities that could accommodate Russia's latest hypersonic ballistic missiles. And just last Friday, Putin said Russia's naval-based nuclear weapons have been completely modernized. You have to listen to this.
The share of modern weapons and equipment in the naval strategic nuclear forces in Russia is already 100%, and I would like to emphasize that this figure must be maintained in the future.
And Russia's 2024 doctrine now treats any conventional attack backed by nuclear powers as a ground for atomic retaliation, a direct threat to NATO's Article 5 Mutual Defense Pact. So, with the NATO boosting troops near Russia's borders, Eastern European countries pulling out of arms treaties, and Moscow preparing for preemptive action, the war bells between Russia and the NATO are ringing loud and clear. And at a time when Washington is pushing for peace, the war in Ukraine is only getting deadlier. Both Moscow and Kiev are accusing each other of breaking truce and targeting civilian areas. While Ukraine targeted Russian forces in Kursk, the port city of Odessa came under massive Russian attack. Swarm of drones rained down on Odessa hours after the NATO chief left the city, along with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Our next report taking a closer look at the present situation and the way things stand.
This is Kherson, where one after the other, 6 explosions reduced entire buildings to rubble. Located near the Black Sea, the city is facing relentless Russian air and artillery strikes.
We have one room that has no windows, so we ran there and thank God we are alive.
Russian drones also struck Odessa, another city near the Black Sea. The images of destruction tell the tale of the carnage. The latest attack came hours after NATO chief Mark Rutte and Ukrainian President Zelensky visited wounded Ukrainian soldiers in an Odessa hospital. Ukraine says Russia carried out 109 airstrikes on Ukrainian military positions and settlements, dropping 177 guided air bombs and deploying over 2,000 kamikaze drones. The Russian attacks surged since Sunday when Russia targeted Sumy, This is the CCTV footage from a grocery shop in the Ukrainian city, when back-to-back missile strikes killed over 30 people and injured over 100 others. Moscow claims its Iskander missiles struck a meeting of Ukrainian military commanders, killing 60 Ukrainian soldiers. Russia accuses Ukraine of using civilians as human shields. Kyiv forces hit Russia's Kursk region that borders Ukraine with dozens of drones. Moscow says over 100 drones were downed. Reports say Ukrainian forces targeted the Russian brigade behind the deadly missile attack on Sumy. Heavy fighting continues near Sudzha, where Russian airborne units attempt to breach defenses. Ukrainian forces repelled 8 assaults in a single day, leveraging drone strikes and artillery to blunt advances. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Shifting focus now to West Asia, the chief of the International Atomic Energy Agency, currently in Tehran, has just made a not too startling revelation. Iran, he says, is not far from building a nuclear bomb, and Tehran is not backing down. Iran's foreign minister, in fact, has drawn a clear red line, making it absolutely clear that Tehran's uranium enrichment program is off the table when it comes to negotiations. And this stance comes even as Iran remains engaged in talks with Washington that aim to shape the future of its nuclear program.
Iran's enrichment is a real accepted matter. We are ready to build confidence in response to possible concerns, but the issue of enrichment is non-negotiable.
Araghchi's comments come as the US administration came together in the White House Situation Room for a high-level strategy meeting. The meeting was about the next phase of the nuclear negotiations with Iran, scheduled for Saturday. According to a report by Axios, US President Donald Trump brought his top national security and foreign policy officials together to finalize America's position ahead of the next round of the talks, debating over potential concessions that America could make or avoid. Inside the room was the entire U.S. top brass: U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, Trump's Special Envoy to West Asia Steve Witkoff. And they had varying opinions, even conflicting views. On one side, Vance and Witkoff pushed for compromise. They argued that some diplomatic give and take might open a path to a final deal. But others, including Rubio and Waltz, were reportedly against this, advocating for a tougher line, one that would keep maximum pressure on Iran. Trump, for his part, has sent conflicting signals. Publicly, he says he prefers a diplomatic solution. But the president also made it clear that if diplomacy fails, military action remains on the table. He's even told aides that the US is prepared to strike Iran's nuclear facilities if negotiations collapse. Despite the secrecy around the Situation Room meeting, the White House confirmed that the maximum pressure campaign continues, and Donald Trump remains adamant that Iran will never get its hands on a nuclear weapon.
Of course, the maximum pressure campaign on Iran continues, but as you know, the president has made it clear he wants to see dialogue and discussion with Iran while making his directive about Iran never being able to obtain a nuclear weapon quite clear. And the president spoke to the Sultan of Oman today, who helped facilitate these talks. I have a readout for all of you. He held a call with the Sultan of Oman today, and he thanked him for hosting the first direct meeting between the United States and Iran and emphasized the need for Iran to end its nuclear program through negotiations.
And a day after appearing to soften his stance, Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff made a sharp U-turn. In a post on X, he demanded that Iran dismantle its enrichment program completely. A stark contradiction to his earlier suggestion that low-level enrichment for energy might be acceptable. And on the other side, Russia, which has been rebuilding its relationship with Washington while maintaining close military ties with Iran, signaled its willingness to mediate. In fact, the Kremlin earlier today said that it stands ready to do whatever it can to help diffuse the tensions and guide Iran and America towards a peaceful resolution. Moscow has repeatedly called for restraint ever since Trump threatened military strikes last month if Iran refused to engage on restricting its nuclear activities. So here's where things stand right now. Iran is maintaining its position on the nuclear deal. America is split between pressure and diplomacy. And Russia is offering diplomatic mediation. The question still is whether Washington will accept Tehran's stand with words or with bombs. And Saturday is almost here. As the US-China trade battle heats up, let's tell you about a crucial weapon that China is using against America. We are talking about rare earths. China has announced restrictions on export of 7 rare earth elements. First, what exactly are rare earths? Rare earth metals are a prized commodity used in various technologies, including smartphones, electric vehicles, electronic displays, wind turbines, so on. The thing is, they are crucial for technology that will end up playing a very important role in the future as well. They are extremely important for the tech race, and China is well aware of that. And its dominance of the rare earth supply chain is something that Beijing could use as a weapon. And the extent of dominance is huge, by the way. Do you know how much of the global mined rare earth production China accounts for? As per the International Energy Agency, that figure stands at 61%. And as far as control over the processing stage is concerned, it's 92% of the global output. Do you know what Xi Jinping called rare earths back in the year 2019? A vital strategic resource. And they are indeed. And given the reliance that America and other countries have on China for these metals, China could use this a lot more to its advantage. And where does the US stand as far as rare earths are concerned? While America's dependence on rare earth imports from China has come down over the years, it's still a long way to go. There are concerted efforts being made to have its own domestic rare earth supply chain, but the road ahead is far too long. Also, extraction and processing is not easy. It's also expensive. On Tuesday, US President Donald Trump ordered a probe into potential new tariffs on all US critical minerals imports. It's a major escalation in his dispute with global trade partners and an attempt to pressure the industry leader China. Trump said in the order that US dependence on mineral imports raises the potential for risks to national security, defense readiness, price stability, and economic prosperity and resilience, quote unquote. And in response, China's foreign ministry has said on Wednesday that artificial intelligence in the supply chain violates the laws of the market economy and international trade rules. The Commerce Secretary has been asked to report his findings to the President within 180 days, including on whether to impose tariffs. And were the US President to then impose a tariff on a country's critical minerals, the rate would supersede the reciprocal tariffs that Trump imposed early this month, according to the White House. All this at a time when the trade war between America and China is only intensifying. China now reportedly faces up to 245% tariff on imports to the US. Where are things headed between the world's two biggest economies? A lot depends on the answer to that question. The United States is preparing to shrink its military footprint in Syria, paving the way for Turkey to potentially step up its influence over Syrian security. And this strategic move marks a possible reduction of US forces by nearly half as Washington starts consolidating its presence in the region. According to reports by Reuters and Israeli media, American defense officials have already tipped off their Israeli counterparts about this upcoming troop reduction. This troop reduction may start as soon as within the next 2 months. And that has sent alarm bells ringing in Jerusalem. Israel reportedly fears the vacuum created by a thinning American presence. It will embolden Ankara to actually expand its reach into Syria, is what is feared. Currently, around 2,000 American soldiers are stationed across northeastern Syria and primarily stationed there to support Kurdish-led forces in preventing the Islamic State from making a comeback. But with consolidation plans underway, that number could soon fall to around 1,000. And there are also doubts about such a steep reduction, reportedly, especially at a time when US President Donald Trump's administration is tightening its military grip across the region. B-2 bombers, US warships, advanced air defense systems have all been deployed in recent weeks as part of a wider show of strength in West Asia against the Houthis and Iran. And these developments coming at a time when the Pentagon is currently reviewing its global troop deployment under the direction of the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Last month itself, a secret Pentagon memo revealed that the US military is being realigned to counter a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan while reducing its presence in other global hotspots. Earlier this month, the Israeli Prime Minister reportedly lobbied hard against a proposed arms deal that would supply Turkey with F-35 fighter jets. Netanyahu even raised these concerns directly with Trump during their recent White House meeting, publicly stating that he does not want Syria turning into a launch pad for attacks on Israeli soil. Since November, in fact, the Israeli military has launched several cross-border airstrikes and targeted operations aimed at preventing HTS-led Syrian troops and potentially Turkish forces from establishing any long-term base of operations near Israeli territory. HTS, remember, came to power after overthrowing Bashar al-Assad. Israel has also accused Ankara of turning Syria into a de facto Turkish protectorate. The security vacuum in Syria has already led to major changes. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces recently inked a deal with the Damascus government to integrate their government bodies and security forces with the central government. And that agreement was reportedly brokered with US approval. During his first term, Trump vowed to pull out all American troops from Syria, though that was never fully realized. And now history seems to be repeating itself. Once again, Israel is pushing back. Israel argues that every inch the US retreats gives Turkey more room to assert control. Whether the US withdraws its troops or alters its plan remains to be seen. The decision could very well determine who calls the shots in post-Assad Syria, whether that's Washington, Ankara, or someone else entirely. And before we go on, here's a quick look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. In a landmark ruling, UK's top court says the legal definition of woman refers to biological sex. We tell you more about the reactions. According to new data, abortion is on the rise in the United States. We tell you more. What is the criticism against Blue Origin's all-women space mission all about? We tell you. Donald Trump escalated his war against elite US universities with a threat to strip Harvard's tax-exempt status if the country's most famous educational establishment refuses to submit to wide-ranging government oversight. Our next story taking a closer look at the Trump administration's crackdown.
Shame on you! Shame Harvard is in the eye of a storm. It's the world's wealthiest university and America's oldest. Harvard has now become the first of 6 Ivy League schools to oppose the Trump administration's list of sweeping demands that the White House said was intended to crack down on campus anti-Semitism. Within hours of Harvard taking its stand, the Trump administration said it is freezing $2.3 billion in federal funding to the school.
First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place.
The Trump administration is calling for changes to its governance, hiring practices, and admissions procedures expands. A list Harvard received on April 3rd, which ordered officials to shut diversity offices and cooperate with immigration authorities for screenings of international students. However, many see the demands as a thinly veiled effort to more broadly curb academic freedoms.
I love it. I think it's amazing. I think more schools across the country need to. I mean, it shows that you're not going to bow down. You're not going to let free speech be taken, not from the campus, not from the students, not from anyone.
Backing Harvard, former US President Barack Obama calls it a ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom. Many students and alumni lauded the university's decision to stand its ground despite the consequences.
Everyone was looking to see who would be the first universities to stand up to the Trump administration, and I'm really heartened that it is Harvard, one of the nation's oldest institutions, certainly one of the most well endowed, with a lot of frankly political connections. I mean, this could be a game changer in terms of saving the sector.
I do think that with an institution with the amount of social, intellectual, and material capital that this place has to stand up, I think is admirable. It's the least that Harvard can do.
Beginning with Columbia University, the Trump administration has rebuked universities across the country over the handling of the pro-Palestinian student protest movement that roiled campuses last year following the 2023 Hamas-led attack inside Israel and the subsequent Israeli attacks on Gaza. With an operating budget of $6.4 billion and $53 billion endowment, it has cushion, but a $2 billion cut is a huge dent. Last week, Harvard started working to borrow $750 million from the Wall Street to help cover general expenses. Now, losing federal research grants could mean fewer research opportunities for students and can also have an impact on faculties. Trump's attacks on Harvard are not isolated. The government's anti-Semitism task force has identified at least 60 universities for review. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Russian ruble has emerged as the best performing global currency this year, gaining 38% against the US dollar, according to Bloomberg data. And that is well ahead of the Swedish krona, up 13%, and the Swiss franc, up 11%. Even gold, a traditional safe haven, has gained only 23%, while silver has risen 12%. The ruble's rise comes as Donald Trump's renewed tariff war shakes investor confidence in the dollar, triggering a broader retreat from US assets. The surge in the ruble is being driven by a combination of aggressive domestic policies and external pressures. The Bank of Russia has raised interest rates to a record 21% to fight inflation and stabilize the economy. And at the same time, capital controls remain firmly in place, with foreign companies restricted from withdrawing assets, keeping money locked inside the country. And economists note that unlike most emerging markets, Russia has been insulated from capital flight due to these measures. The dollar slide is intensifying. With Wall Street warning of a potential US recession, the euro has climbed over 9% to $1.13. The pound is up nearly 6% to $1.32, and options data showing increasing bets against the dollar. JP Morgan CEO says a recession is the likely outcome, while BlackRock's Larry Fink believes a contraction may already be underway. Bond yields briefly spiked, echoing the UK's 2022 market crisis, but eased after Trump paused some tariffs. And despite the turbulence, Citi's Jane Fraser remains optimistic, saying the dollar will retain its status as the world's reserve currency. US President Donald Trump is on a major cost-cutting spree. In fact, he is planning to close dozens of embassies and consulates overseas. Why is that? Reportedly in a bid to cut down the State Department budget and also to limit the diplomatic presence of the US abroad. And reports suggest the Trump administration is looking to close nearly 30 overseas embassies and consulates globally. The proposal, contained in an internal departmental memo, recommends closing 10 embassies and 17 consulates in a move aimed at reducing Washington's footprint at the US diplomatic missions in several countries, especially in Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. And key among them are Somalia and Iraq. That's not all. Embassies in Malta, Luxembourg, Lesotho, the Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, South Sudan are all part of the list. And it only goes on expanding. The consulates which will be shuttered through this proposal reportedly include 5 consulates in France, 2 in Germany, 2 in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 1 in the UK, 1 in South Africa, 1 in South Korea. That's the embassies and consulates Trump is talking about. But would that mean that diplomatic operations in these parts would take a direct hit? Well, the document proposes a solution to that, as the closed embassies' duties will be covered by outposts in the neighboring countries. And that's significant because embassies and consulates in a way serve as important outposts for the US State Department by providing services like visa processing, assistance for American citizens in need. Not just that, the posts also collect critical information to send back to Washington and often serve as important diplomatic tools as the US looks to counter countries like China. But the bigger question here still is, what exactly prompted Donald Trump to propose such a move in the first place? At the core of it is the Trump administration's bid to shrink the federal government workforce, aided by Elon Musk-backed Department of Government Efficiency. Just to save government money, we've seen how that panned out over the last few months, with over 100,000 employees in various US agencies affected either by mass layoffs or buyouts. In fact, next on the, as a part of the plans is the US State Department, the budget of which is proposed to be lowered from $54.4 billion in 2025 to $28.4 billion in 2026. That's nearly 50%. Not just that, funding for educational and cultural exchanges like the Fulbright program, one of the most prestigious US scholarships, is also under scrutiny. And if that wasn't enough, the new proposal also seeks to eliminate funding for international organizations, including the United Nations and NATO, which could have significant impact on international peacekeeping efforts and entail risks in the face of volatile world order and the implications. The Trump administration has answers, as it wants to channelize the money saved via these measures to promote democratic processes, counter drug trafficking, among others. But is the Trump administration moving a mile a minute with its deliberate cost-cutting initiative and simply getting ahead of itself? So much so that important institutions and enterprises are being sacrificed? Only time will tell. Shifting focus for now, amid the rising tensions in the South China Sea, the Philippines says it found 5 underwater drones capable of gathering crucial information linked to underwater warfare. Philippine Rear Admiral saying the data collection from these drones served purposes beyond navigation. Manila also said several drones bore Chinese markings, while at least one relayed a signal to China. Listen in.
There is a 55 to 80% likelihood that these were deployed by the Chinese Communist Party. Why 55 to 80%? Is because of the components inside. Not all of them have markings that they were made in China. Others are available commercial off the shelf. They have the capability to receive, to process, to store, and to transmit data through satellite communications to a station on land, to a mothership, or to other drones.
Meanwhile, the Chinese Coast Guard has accused the Philippines of harassing one of its ships patrolling waters near Huangyan Dao in the South China Sea. China says the Philippine Coast Guard ship dangerously approached the Chinese vessel Zhongnan Crossing, close to the bow of the Chinese vessel 4 times. The development comes as Manila prepares for large-scale military exercises with treaty ally America this month.
We are looking at more or less 14,000 participants on both sides. We have an increase in the number of participants with the Australian Defence Force, the ADF. I think there are around 200, am I right, Doug? 200 participants from the ADF. We are going to have active observers coming from the JSDF, the Japanese Defence Force.
Philippine and US soldiers will take part in the upcoming exercises that will focus on enhancing maritime, territorial and coastal defenses. The drills will start on the 21st of April till the 9th of May and will also include soldiers from Australia and Japan. Who is a woman? A mother, a sister, a daughter, a wife, a presence that nurtures and sustains, builds homes, breaks glass ceilings. But in a world reshaped by identity politics and social flux, even this timeless question has become a battleground in a way. Now, Britain's highest court has spoken out in a landmark ruling that settles years of legal ambiguity. These are the images of women's rights activists celebrating the verdict outside UK Supreme Court in London.
Today, the judges have said what we always believed to be the case, that women are protected by their biological sex, that sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
The UK Supreme Court has declared that for the purpose of law, the definition of a woman is rooted in biological sex, not gender identity. The judgment upholds that the concept of sex is binary and has significant implications for legislation, policy making and social discourse. The case stemmed from a challenge to the Gender Representation on Public Boards Scotland Act that sought to redefine woman to include trans women for the purposes of increasing gender diversity. The court struck that down, ruling that sex in law means biological sex, as recorded at birth or changed through recognized medical transition, not based on self-declaration.
The terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex. But we counsel against reading this judgment as a triumph of one or more groups in our society at the expense of another. It is not.
In fact, let's also tell you that in terms of the reactions, we are getting you those reactions in just a bit. The judges, however, cautioned this should not be seen as a political victory for any side in the increasingly polarized culture war. Some trans activists feel the judgment suggests there will be times when trans people can be excluded from both men's and women's spaces and services.
Well, yes, this is a huge area for workplace tension. The reality is that the trans community do feel underrepresented, which was really what this case was about, and also do feel excluded and not included in the workplace. So they will very much see this judgment as wounding them and will view it as anti-protectionist.
The ruling brings some clarity in the UK to a contentious issue that has also roiled politics in other parts of the world, as women, parents, LGBTQ plus groups, lawmakers and athletes have debated gender identity rights. Shifting focus for now to the United States. The trend in abortions is showing a shift in America. According to new data, while the number of abortions increased slightly in 2024 from the year before, it is the state-wise variability of abortion rates that is posing fresh concerns. Let's tell you more. Research conducted by an institute that works for sexual and reproductive health and rights shows over 1 million abortions took place in 2024 across all states without near total bans. That marks less than a 1% increase from 2023 to 2024. However, researchers also found that abortion rates widely varied from state to state. While some American states experienced significant decreases, others are seeing notable increases. In Florida, roughly 12,000 fewer abortions were provided in 2024 than in 2023. This was largely due to the state's policy banning abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy that took effect in May 2024. Similarly, South Carolina provided about 3,500 fewer abortions in 2024 than in 2023. Again, this is attributed to the state's 6-week ban that the state Supreme Court upheld in August 2023. Both states recorded fewer abortions last year than in 2023. On the other hand, in Wisconsin, the number of abortions provided increased from about 1,300 in 2023 to about 6,000 in 2024, an increase of nearly 400%. Not just Wisconsin, states like Arizona, California, Ohio, Virginia also saw significant increases in the abortions provided in 2024 as compared to the year before. What explains this is the immediate question. Access to abortion in states like Wisconsin became largely unavailable after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade in 2022 and struck down the constitutional right to abortion. However, a 2023 judgment ruled that abortion was not illegal in the state. A pattern seems to be unfolding here, with abortion becoming far more common in those U.S. states that had outlawed it in the first place. Since the 2022 Roe v. Wade order, over a dozen states have banned the procedure, and as a result, many people had no choice but to end their pregnancies in other states. But traveling to another state for abortion access has its challenges. It's not just complicated, but also requires financial and logistical help. In 2024, the number of such abortions declined by almost 10%. Due to the rise in telehealth services from providers in states with shield laws designed to protect from prosecution in states with abortion bans. This made 2024 a year with significant changes in state abortion laws, both to expand as well as to restrict access to care. Abortion rights are a sensitive issue in the U.S. The issue was a key election plank, in fact, in 2024 U.S. presidential election. Another question still is, will this pattern of overall rise in abortions across the U.S. persist, or will it reduce with policy changes under Trump 2.0? We'll have to wait and watch. Schools in Hong Kong are reporting a worrying trend. Far few students are attending classes in recent years, a phenomenon that has drastically risen post-COVID-19. Students are complaining that daily tests in the regular curriculum as well as their extracurricular activities are becoming too overwhelming, which is why some don't want to attend school at all. But it's not just the grueling classwork that is causing the students to avoid the classroom. Many are also struggling to connect with their classmates and make friends, thanks to the remote or hybrid classroom format that became a routine during the COVID era and even beyond. The remote courses during COVID-19 brought in a sense of isolation among students, making it difficult for them to step out and interact with their batchmates. But it's one thing for all this to impact classroom activities and quite another to make students stop attending school altogether. And the numbers are not just in tens or hundreds. Thousands are chronically absenting themselves from schools, at times for as many as 7 days in a row. As per an SEMP report, the number of chronically absent students rose to 4,500 in 2022 to 23 and crossed 5,500 in the past academic year. But it's not just Hong Kong that is grappling with the problem. Even economies like the US, Britain, Australia are reporting significant post-COVID absenteeism. What's the way out? Well, on one hand, post-pandemic challenges are making a return to a normal academic schedule formidable for students. It does, however, present an opportunity for the educators. Educators now have the chance to redesign and restructure the usual school curriculums to not only meet the needs of the students, but also to equip them with social and communication skills, apart from focusing on academic knowledge alone. And this would make the students better prepared to face the world and even tackle modern challenges. In turn, help them find their way back to schools. As heat waves and risks of wildfires travel plans this summer, Europeans are ditching sunbeds in Greece and Italy for sweaters in Sweden and Finland. The question is, what's driving this change in travel trends and patterns? Our next report telling you.
The great escape from Europe's summer sizzle is on, and this time it's to cooler climes. As temperatures soar and southern Europe sweats under the weight of overcrowding, soaring costs, and wildfire risks, a new wave of travelers is heading north. From Iceland's glaciers to Estonia's forests, the Nordics and Baltics are seeing a spike in tourists who are swapping sunbeds for sweaters. Dubbed coolcations, these trips are gaining traction among seasoned baby boomers and wide-eyed first-timers alike. For many, it's no longer about basking in the Mediterranean sun, it's about escaping it. With southern hotspots like Italy and Greece becoming too hot to handle, bookings are shifting toward the shoulder seasons, leaving July and August wide open for destinations that offer crisp air and calm vibes. Northern Europe's scenic spots, once seen as fringe players, are now front and center. Countries like Sweden, Finland and Norway are quietly cashing in on the climate shift, with travelers seeking refuge in nature, not nightlife. The economic upside? A welcome breeze for off-beat destinations that have long played second fiddle to sun-drenched coasts. As the mercury rises, tourism dollars are heading north and staying longer. The verdict is in. The sun may shine bright, but the future of travel is decidedly cooler. Bureau Report, WION The World is One.
Sam Altman's OpenAI is working on a social network that could rival Elon Musk's X. Reports stating that the social media platform is reportedly in its early prototype phase. At the moment, it's not yet known if OpenAI will be launching a standalone app or the new platform will be integrated directly into ChatGPT. Reports also suggesting that the social media platform may have a user interface similar to the platform X. If the reports are indeed true, then the arrival of an X-like platform will most likely escalate the existing rivalry between Altman and Musk that were once OpenAI co-founders. Early this year itself, when reports of Meta building a ChatGPT rival surfaced, Sam Altman took to X, suggesting a future app could be in the works for OpenAI. Meanwhile, having an app could also provide OpenAI with the valuable, unique, real-time data, something that X and Meta already have. While Musk's AI chatbot, Grok, utilizes X content, Meta's Llama is trained on its extensive user data from across all its platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, WhatsApp. In the vast expanse of our galaxy, a dramatic celestial event has unfolded, offering a sobering preview of what may one day befall our own planet. Astronomers have documented a gas giant, similar to Jupiter, spiraling into its host star. Up next is a fascinating story about the dynamic and often violent nature of planetary systems. Take a look.
For decades, scientists believed planets died only when aging stars ballooned into red giants and swallowed up nearby worlds. Now, new data from the James Webb Space Telescope reveals a darker truth. Planets can choose their death. In a historic first, astronomers witnessed a gas giant, 10 times the mass of Jupiter, locked in a death spiral around its host star, 12,000 light-years away. Gravitational forces slowly eroded its orbit, dragging it closer until it skimmed the star's atmosphere. The friction then heated the planet to thousands of degrees, stripping it of its gaseous layers and triggering a fiery finale. Such events, while rare, are not isolated. They provide critical insights into the life cycles of planetary systems and the eventual fate of planets orbiting aging stars. The gravitational interactions and tidal forces at play can lead to orbital decay, culminating in the engulfment of planets by their stars. Turning our gaze inward, the future of Earth is intrinsically tied to the life cycle of our Sun. In approximately 5 billion years, the Sun is expected to exhaust its hydrogen fuel, expanding into a red giant. During this phase, it will likely engulf the inner planets, including Mercury and Venus. The fate of Earth remains a topic of scientific debate. Some models suggest that Earth may be consumed by the Sun, while others propose it could survive, albeit in a drastically altered state. Regardless of the exact outcome, the transformation of the Sun will render Earth uninhabitable. Rising temperatures will evaporate the oceans, and the loss of the atmosphere will strip the planet of its capacity to support life long before any potential engulfment. But don't worry, that's expected to happen 5 billion years from now. Till then, we can continue to pause and marvel at the wonders of our cosmos.
The all-female Blue Origin rocket launch has garnered a lot of attention. But not everyone is cheering, it seems. The mission has sparked a lot of backlash, including from some A-listers in Hollywood. The Jeff Bezos-owned Blue Origin mission has drawn criticism from several female celebrities, like Olivia Wilde and Olivia Munn. They are not too thrilled about the so-called space stunt. On board were big names like Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez, alongside Gayle King, Amanda Nguyen, and others. But the internet was not exactly kind. The 11-minute space flight quickly became meme material. Model Emily Ratajkowski even called it beyond parody, saying that she was downright disgusted by the situation. Launched from West Texas and funded by Bezos himself, the flight was met with widespread mockery online. Comedian Amy Schumer took to Instagram, posting a sarcastic video mocking the hype surrounding the mission. And she's not alone, by the way. Early this month itself, actor Olivia Munn publicly questioned the goal of the flight. In response, some other celebrities have also spoken out, defending the mission and its message. It marked the 11th mission under Blue Origin's new Shepherd program and the company's first all-female flight. North Korea is carrying out massive infrastructure projects in the city of Pyongyang, and the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un recently unveiled a new district in the capital in a grand ceremony. Thousands greeted him as he arrived at the venue with his daughter. Take a look. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off, leaving you with Gravitas Worldview. Thanks very much for watching.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Brice Oligui Nguema, elected with absolute majority in Gabon's presidential election. The junta chief-led coup ended more than 5 decades of corruption-plagued rule by the Bongo family in August 2023, with a promise to return the country to democratic rule. Tanzanian authorities arrest, detain and question leader of the opposition party Chadema, Tundu Lissu, on charges of inciting violence and for demanding no general elections this year. His party has been disqualified from the upcoming polls. And vultures have an image problem. Seen as ugly and associated with death, they are among the least loved animals in the world. But conservationists in Africa are trying to change that. Watch Wild of Africa at these times on WION. Wild is One.
Catch me on Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Imagine a world where owning your dream asset is just a click away, where wealth is no longer exclusive to the few. Tokenization, the game changer transforming assets into digital opportunities. A revolutionary technology opening doors to a new era of investment.
Don't miss Token Money Magnet, a bold initiative by Kalp Foundation. Only on WION World is One.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. This is WION World is One. We are glad you're watching. Time now for Pulse. I'm Eric Njoka. Let's begin with the headlines. Israel military claims it has turned 30% of Gaza into security buffer zone. Informs it has carried out 100 targeted eliminations since 18th of March, while its airstrikes have hit 1,200 terror targets in Gaza. Iran is not far from having an atomic bomb. The head of the United